with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, we've got a really incredible show today. There's just so much to talk about, just so much. And you know what we're going to start with, though, is these two very large bills that's kind of hung up in Congress right now.
Well, good for that.
Good for that. Well, you know, you got the
hope it hangs around.
The real infrastructure bill of the $1.2 trillion, which there seems to be some bipartisan support for. But the progressives have tied that to a $3.5 trillion, what they call human infrastructure. And Senator Joe Manchin, who's kind of standing in the way of that, it says that maybe. Well, so far, so good.
I'm not as optimistic as you are.
But so far, and he says it's turning the country into the land of entitlements. The land of entitlements in this, and it's not like keeping us competitive like President Biden had talked about in Michigan this week. And we're going to hear a couple of sound clips from President Biden here in a moment, and we're going to get our guest to comment on those. And it's really good for a good, healthy discussion about this investment and what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. We're very pleased to have with us Charles Lipson from the University of Chicago. Charles, welcome back to Made in America.
Neil, it's good to talk with you. And Rich, nice to meet you.
Well, here we go. We're going to start off with a soundbite, and we've got a couple here from the president's visit to Michigan this week. And we're going to start off with this, and I'd like to get your comments on it. Can we play that?
That's why I propose two critical pieces of legislation being debated back in Washington right now. The first, a bill to invest in our physical infrastructure. And the second is a bill to invest in our human infrastructure.
So, Charles, human infrastructure, and the thing that I'd like to get your opinion on right now is the $3.5 trillion and what the president calls human infrastructure, which is really just a bunch of handouts. And he talks about making us competitive. Is this going to really make us competitive? I mean, people staying at home and not developing into really productive members of society?
Well, of course not. You're absolutely right. I'd say the first thing to say is that the term human infrastructure is doublespeak from Orwell. There is no such thing as human infrastructure. We do sometimes talk about human capital in the sense that if you go to a university and you don't take gender studies, but rather you take engineering or accounting, you actually build capacity for future income. And that's sometimes called human capital. But calling all this human infrastructure is really just an attempt to take the term infrastructure, which people support, and attach it to something that they don't support, which is a lot more social spending. I'm not the world's expert on whether or not this will ultimately make it through Congress, other than the fact that we all know that the biggest bill won't make it through, and that anything that does will bust not only the budget but increase inflation. But I am thinking a lot about what all this would mean for the country.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at it, you know, the truth of the matter is most people don't understand it at all. They have no idea what's hidden in these bills, what's sequestered away on different pages, and the pages could be as much as 2,700 from what we're hearing. Maybe you're going to be more, maybe a little bit less. And the reality of it, I mean, this is something when you said human capital. I mean, this could be made into a black and white film noir. You know, if Orson Welles was alive.
Well, Rich,
that's how bad this is.
Rich, there's not even.
What do you think, Charlie? I think that's where it's at.
I'd watch the film, but I don't know that I want to pay the taxes. Basically, what all the polling shows is that if you tell people you get a free Mercedes, they like it. If you tell people they have to pay for the Mercedes, they don't like it. And that's where it all stands right now.
Well, and then when you hear about, you use these terms such as, a climate core, and people think, well, I wonder how good that is. How bad is that? How good is that? Well, when people start realizing what a climate core could really be in terms of, well, you can't use as much electricity because you're going over your budget for electricity. You can't have as much hot water. You can't have as much air conditioning. You can't heat as much as you want to heat anymore because it's just not fair. It's not equitable. I guess that's the word you'd probably use.
Well,
in this day and age.
They actually use the term tree equity in defending the bill. In their summary of the bill, they somehow think that there is such a thing as tree equity. I don't know what it would be. But I do think that you're also putting your finger on one of the core disputes in our national policy right now. Well, actually, two. One is, how much centralization of authority do we really want in Washington? And I'll give you an example. Under Michelle Obama, we began to get national rules on what school children could eat. That had always been up to local schools and local school boards. Nobody ever decided this should be nationalized. This should be done at the national level. They just snuck it in, and the way they snuck it in is they first said, okay, we're going to pay for poor children to have lunches. Well, everybody's in favor of that. Nobody wants to see poor children in school who can't, who are malnourished. But then they follow up very quickly by saying, okay, if we're going to do that, then what we're going to do is we're going to set the rules for what you can feed them. And in the South, that meant you couldn't include grits because grits didn't meet the White House's culinary standards. But who set those standards? Not elected officials.
Well, I mean, that's exactly correct. Charlie,
go ahead. Yeah, one of the issues is centralization. The other issue, which you're really seeing now, is control. I think there's a lot of pushback in America about government control at any level, and you're seeing that in the school board things. The basic problem at school boards is that schools basically have a monopoly over your children. So if you don't like the way that Ford builds its trucks, you don't protest. You just buy a Dodge or you buy a Honda or something. But if you don't like what the schools are doing to your children, you have to protest politically because they don't give you the money to send your children elsewhere. So what you're seeing is a huge amount of pushback over control.
Yeah, very, very, very well said, and a great way to sum that all up about what's happening with the school boards, and boy, that's a whole other topic. But let's get to another comment that the president made this week in Michigan.
These bills are about competitiveness versus complacency. They're about opportunity versus decay. They're about leading the world or continuing to let the world pass us by, which is literally happening. To support these investments is to create a rising America. America is moving. To oppose these investments is to be complicit in America's decline.
Wow. So if we don't spend $3.5 trillion largely on entitlements, and that's coming from a Democrat senator, that we're complicit in America's decline. And I would argue the opposite. By flushing this money down the Potomac and just totally wasting this great value of the American people, it's hard-earned dollars, to invest in something very constructive and letting our entrepreneurs, keep more and more of their money so that they can invest this money in increasing production and making jobs and so forth. But the president has decided that raising taxes, using this money, and spending on entitlements somehow is going to make us stronger. Would you kindly comment? Yeah.
It won't. It simply won't. But what I argue, if your listeners are interested, they can go to charleslipson.com. I have my articles there, including my latest one. I say that really what's at stake here is not just the bottom line, the top line number of how much money. I think what the Democrats are really trying to do is turn the United States into something like a European-style social democracy. This is not communism, but it is a social democracy. And I think that that's not something that the Americans voted for Biden to do. They didn't give the Democrats a large majority. A lot of it would violate our basic constitutional rights. And I think that the fight is over very big issues beyond the immediate budget questions.
Well, I think that's exactly correct. And to do so, they utilize the forces that are out there to create the image that they have, such as, we're in decline. Other countries are passing us by. The irony of the whole thing is that prior to Biden taking the inauguration, we're leading the world. We had the highest employment. We had the strongest economy in the history of the United States, which means the history of the world. Everything was going in the right direction. The market was doing well. Jobs were created. We had more jobs and we had people to fill it, but the good way. And here they come in, and the ironic situation is they've destroyed that was good. And now they see us in decline, which is something they created. I guess they don't have a mirror, Charles.
Well, I think that some of the issues about decline are long-term issues and go beyond the last presidency or 10 years or something like that. America is in a global competition, and its principal competitor, of course, is China. But the way that you compete in this modern world is to have relatively low taxes and a good educational system. It seems to me that what the Biden administration wants to do undermines us on both counts.
Charles, we're going to give you the last word, and that is indeed the last word. Thanks for being with us, Charles Lipson from the University of Chicago. Charles, come back and see us again real soon.
I'm delighted to do so.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I still have a lot more to cover. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, to follow up on that conversation, there's still a lot more to talk about as far as the $3.5 trillion proposed plan that progressives want to get through Congress. We talked about Senator Joe Manchin and his thoughts about a society that lives on entitlements. Well, let's listen to the senator in his own words.
I've been very clear when it comes to who we are as a society, who we are as a nation, and why we are still the hope of the world. I don't believe that we should turn our society into an entitlement society.
That's it. This is Made in America. This is a country, this is a radio show that celebrates all of these wonderful American companies, our entrepreneurs, our small businesses. They don't want free handouts. We're a country that's on the move, that does things, that makes things, that has great ideas. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. An entitlement society will destroy that. If people are just saying, well, I'm just going to stay at home today because I don't need to work. And by the way, we've seen that with this unemployment insurance here lately, right, Rich? That it's so hard to get people to work. Imagine what this will do. And by the way, the senator also said this last week. Hey, look at my record. I've never been a progressive. Never, ever been a liberal. And nobody can ever say that. So if you want to pass this type of stuff, you better go out and elect more progressives, because I'm not one. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think the senator is sincere. I think he really means it, and I think he'll vote for something, but he's not going to vote for this $3.5 trillion monstrosity.
Well, what worries me, I think he will vote for something. I don't think he's going to vote no on this bill, which I think he should be voting no, and I hope Sinema stays the course, particularly after they assaulted her this week.
Yeah, but we don't even know what she's what she says. She just says, I don't support it. I don't know what she does support. She's been pretty mum on that. At least Manchin comes out and says, I'm at 1.5 trillion.
Well, I think he felt compelled to say something. But here's the thing. He's talking about an entitlement society. Entitlement society doesn't have a work ethic. We had that conversation before. We had a conversation just last week. We were talking about those who were on the dole in the 70s in the UK. That became a very, de rigueur thing to do, that people were supported by the state and they didn't make it on their own. So if, in fact, we become an entitlement society, Neil, we lose what makes us so successful as a country. And that was just why you became an entrepreneur and a manufacturer of so many different products. It's that we can do it. If you dream it and you work hard, you can do it. Or at least you get a shot at doing it. And if we lose that concept of, made in America, the fact that we are the can-do country, then I think we've lost the country. We've lost one of the reasons why we've been so successful. From World War I, tell them the Yanks are coming. They're drumming everywhere. Well, people feared us coming there because we're wild. We're the crazy country in the world. We're the ones that were breaking the mold. We're the ones that turned away from decades upon decades and thousands of years of aristocratic control in Europe. It's one of the reasons that we were established. It wasn't just for religious freedom. It was the idea that the socioeconomics of a continent didn't work. And those who had it, and those who didn't will never have it because they were kept down. So if we become an entitlement society, Neil, two things will occur. One, the person who really wants to achieve in life doesn't care if they achieve in life anymore, because why? It's easy.
There's
you don't
no
have to do that. There's no incentive to do so. The other thing is, the other part of society will resent those who are not doing anything. So in other words, you and I work hard. We run companies. We make money, we employ lots of people. Because we do okay, we're going to be challenged and taxed and beaten up verbally because we're not doing our fair share, we're not doing the right thing, and that money that we create goes from those who can to those who won't. That's not what this country is all about. And I think that's on that one peg of the economic discussion, a lot of America is going to say, you know what, I reject this. I reject this. And that is why I think a lot of people are saying right now, I don't have confidence in the Biden administration. This week, the polling came out for Quinnipiac, and it was at 30-some-odd percent, 32% acceptance factor. 55% said they don't think the president's competent. They don't think his administration is capable of steering the ship. Where do you think that's coming from, Neil?
Well, I think it's coming from the policies and what they see. And, I mean,
exactly.
It's just been one train wreck after another. Think about it. It's been one train wreck after another.
I mean, I can't think of anything that this is. I mean, in all sincerity, put aside the fact that I'm a conservative. Just for a second, let's just get out there. Can I name anything this administration has touched that makes my life better, your life better, and the thousands of people listening to the show right now is their life better? It's not energy, that's for sure, because that's going through the roof. It's not immigration, because that's totally out of control. It's not the virus, because that's not exactly under control. It's not jobs, because that's out of control. It's not international trade, and we'll discuss that later with Nigel Farage. That's out of control. So find me something that these guys, and Biden in particularly, have touched. Forget about Kamala Harris. Who the heck knows where she is? And wherever she is, stay there. You know what I mean? But if you can find anything, 1-800, call Rich. That's what you need to do.
Well, Rich, I don't know how to top that, but you put it very succinctly, and thanks for that historic perspective, because I think you also nailed that as well. So we're going to move on. We got another great guest coming on. We have Brian Hamilton, very, very successful tech entrepreneur, and he's given back to society. We love these stories of people giving back to society, and he's got a program that he does called Inmates to Entrepreneurs. I love it. Inmates to Entrepreneurs. We're going to be speaking to Brian here just in a moment.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Roppin. Hey, Rich, we've been so fortunate lately to have some really great stories of various folks out there who are doing really incredible things to help our people, whether it is in vocational training. We had the Metallica people, the heavy rock band Metallica, believe it or not, has how many? They've raised millions of dollars.
Almost $6 million have been given away in the last almost 10 years.
Right, and we've also had Jethro Tull's people on.
For scholarships.
For scholarships,
so you can get an apprentice program and become a tradesman or person, I should say.
But Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, right? He has done some incredible stuff with helping our wounded warriors and providing jobs here to actually make hand sanitizer, during the pandemic. A really, really fascinating story. But we're just seeing that all over the country.
Well, the serviceman also got a free Bundy flute. I want you to know that, because that's what he played.
He was the flautist.
That's right. He was the flautist.
Yeah.
Had to throw that in. Sorry.
On one leg, right?
Yep.
I mean, that was his thing. But no, he had a great band. Well, both of them were great bands. But just incredible things going on, and we're seeing that the late Charlie Daniels been on our show. Great guy.
Great guy.
And talking about his support of entrepreneurialism and how he loved creating jobs, through his music, and all these families that he's seen grow up, these young kids that's grown up because of the work that he's done as an entrepreneur. Very, very fascinating. Well, we have another great story right now. We have with us Brian Hamilton. He is the founder of SageWorks, a very successful financial tech company. And he's also the founder of Inmates to Entrepreneurs. And Brian is joining us right now. Brian, welcome to Made in America.
Yeah, hey, fellas. How you guys doing today?
Good. So tell us about Inmates to Entrepreneurs. I mean, it's really fascinating. I mean, sure. I've read about it, and on your website and the Brian Hamilton Foundation. I mean, very fascinating. Tell us what you're up to.
Well, actually, Rich and Neil, it's kind of funny. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid, and I always joke that it's the only organization I ever formed. I'll never make any money from it, but I've been doing it 29 years, and what I love about it is the title. The title is the description, right? I mean, basically, we help people who have been incarcerated, and not just people who have been incarcerated, but judicially involved, to start their own small service businesses, because statistically, the bottom line is it's very, very difficult for people coming out of prison or involved with the judicial system to get a decent job. In fact, it doesn't happen. It's the politicians talk about it, but it just doesn't happen. It really does not happen, certainly on a statistical basis. So Reverend Harris and I started in 1992. Can't believe it. Back when Nirvana was big, and that was a different day. It was 29 years ago. Reverend Harris and I, he was doing sort of this Bible ministry, the Bible thumping around the different prisons. I went with them. I love Reverend Harris. He's a sort of a beam of light. And I met some people in prison, and small talk during the sort of Bible stuff. Hey, what are you going to do when you get out? I'm going to try to get a job. And I remember thinking, wow, man, that might be hard to do. So that was the light bulb moment. That was the inception or the genesis of Inmates to Entrepreneurs. As an entrepreneur, I thought, hey, instead of getting a job, go create one. Go create your own job. Create your own company. And Rev and I started going around to the prisons and teaching people how to start low-capital service businesses. And, of course, 30 years later, we have well, actually, I guess an entire North American footprint now. I think we've reached about 1 million people, and it's all about, it's really, I'm going too long here to a simple question, but it's all about empowering people to take control of their lives, and hey, let's go forward here. Let's make something happen. Whether it's racism or sexism or discrimination against people who have been in prison. I mean, that's just the way it is. So what do we do to change that? And the way we change that is we make people entrepreneurs, because if you look at the history of the United States, I don't like the word disadvantage, but every group that has had difficulty, the way they've risen up is through being an entrepreneur. So that, I don't know if that's answered the question. It probably answered your one question and 3 other ones.
Yeah, but we speak serpentine, so don't worry about it. We can do that, and we can all wind up in the same place. You may do a few curves, but we're waiting for you. So, all right. So I think this is a really good thing, and there are a number of folks in South Florida, which is where we broadcast from, that feel the same way that you do. If you look at the stats, maybe you know this. But the stats of those who wind up back in prison because they really have nothing to do. They're set out into a society. They don't know how to deal with it, and they're not trained to deal with the reality of taking care of themselves anymore. And I don't mean this in a pedantic sense that, oh my God, I don't know how to whatever. I mean in the terms of paying bills and things like that. How are they going to make the money to do that? And unless they learn how to wash, I saw this in a James Cagney movie. So unless they learn how to do laundry or something in the prison, they're not taught to do that. So what you're doing, I think, is giving them a passport. You're giving them an opportunity to have this document and an intellectual document that they can then go out there and actually not wind up back in prison, which does everybody no good. It doesn't do them any good, it doesn't do the victim any good, and it doesn't do us as taxpayers any good, because we're underwriting the same problem, and we deal with a Band-Aid, but we don't deal with the virus.
Well, why is that? That's Dr. Rich. That means you've got a PhD that makes you dangerous, a dangerous man.
Yeah, I mean, it cost my father a lot of money, and I had the wrong doctor.
I'm goofing on you, but I'm goofing on you. But what I'm saying is, why is that, though? You guys ever think about that? Like, let's be honest, right? I'm 58 years old, okay? I ran a tech company for 20 years. I sold it 3 years ago. I've been doing this whole inmate entrepreneur thing for 30 years, right? I mean, honestly, Dr. Rich, I haven't run into, no one argues with us. I mean, the liberals, the conservatives, the whites, the blacks, the women, men, it doesn't matter. People from the South, people from South Florida, everybody gets it immediately. They all understand it, right? Here's the thing. We all believe that it's just an amazing phenomenon. We all believe that, if you do something wrong, there should be some punishment, or you pay your, pay back to society, whatever it is, right? We all believe that, right? I really think that, here's the truth. I really think that it is difficult, right, okay, in America today, or, it doesn't matter. It is difficult for people to think in a blank slate way. I don't care who they are. I don't care if it's Dr. Rich or Neil or Brian Hamilton. It's very difficult for us to do that. It's almost like it sounds great until you got the opportunity. Let me give you a simple example. Just a simple example. I'm a business guy. I mean, largely that's mostly what I am. In the United States, if you go bankrupt, this is true. You can look this up. If you go bankrupt, you stiff your creditors. You don't pay them, right? You go bankrupt. Mm-hmm. In 10 years, there's no record of that anywhere. No record. You cannot find a record of that. That's going bankrupt, which as a businessman is not exactly a great model, right? In the United States of America today, if you commit a crime, and I mean, by the way, crime's a strong word, guys. Let's be real. I'm not talking about bank robbers here. I'm talking about a DUI, God forbid, or a failure to appear. Do you know that appears in a Google search in perpetuity? You can't get that off. My son, and I know, God, he hates when I do this, but he got a DUI. He was a college kid who was drinking. Can you imagine that? Can you actually believe that? He's a college kid who was drinking. Got a DUI. You pull him up. There's mugshots right there. And so what I'm trying to say is I think individually people are good. But the collective is where we get into problems. And, for example, in hiring people, let's just get real. Let's get real here. It's true. When people apply for jobs, what's the first thing you do on me, guys? You pull up Google. He's a fintech entrepreneur, this and that, whatever. Same thing in the hiring process. You hit the Google, you pull the guy up, and guess what? That person doesn't even get to – if they get to fill out the application, it's thrown in the garbage. And so it's a great injustice. I'm sorry, Dr. Rich. I'm going on too long. Your point is
no, it's good. This is good stuff.
It's a great injustice. It's a great injustice. And the only way that's going to change, like racism or every other ism there is out there, is when people start to change their hearts. And that's hard to do.
Hey, Brian, man, it's been a great segment. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but boy, you summed it up very well. We'd like to get you back and keep us informed about your progress and dig deeper into this. It's very, very fascinating. Brian Hamilton, the founder of Inmates to Entrepreneurs.
And give the website. Where's the website, Brian? How do they reach you?
Inmates to Entrepreneurs, which if you can spell entrepreneurs, you get extra credit. Go to the brianhamilton.org.
There you go.
I-B-R-I, brianhamilton.org. That's the best place to go.
Wonderful.
Hey, Brian, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks a lot, fellas. Appreciate it, man. Bye-bye.
Coming up, Dr. Rich and I still have a lot more to talk about.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we've done a lot of shows centered around trade and how trade is very important. And I got to tell you, in the age of the pandemic, and people are not traveling overseas as much, but still, 75% of the world's wealth, 95% of the world's population is outside the United States. So the world market is still very, very important. And despite people not traveling right now internationally as much as they have, still the markets around the world are doing very well. There's a lot of markets right now that are doing very, very well. And they're also recovering from the pandemic. And there's been a surge of demand, not just in the United States. You see a lot of our shelves are empty. Go to a Walmart, go to a Costco, go to anywhere.
There are a lot of shortages right now.
That's right, because demand is so high. And, that's happening around the world. So it's very important that American companies are able to participate in that. And one of the biggest markets for American products, it's way up there in the top 5, is the UK, the United Kingdom. Let's listen to Nigel Farage, a member of Parliament in the UK, very high profile.
Headed up Brexit.
You see him all the time. He's very eloquent. He talks very well, and he sums up things incredibly. Let's listen to Nigel.
I think what we've really learned in the last few days is that Joe Biden does not like America's closest ally, and we've been your closest ally for well over 100 years. He doesn't like us. There is no progress on a trade deal.
Well, Rich, it's and I feel really bad about that. I really do. But I don't know who Joe Biden does like. He must not like the French either.
He likes his son, apparently, because he protects him. So and he must like the Chinese because he's protecting them as well.
Well, maybe that's it. But, you make a very good point. But the whole issue with the UK, come on now. This is the UK.
Well, let me explain where Nigel's coming from on that. That when Boris Johnson was here and he was having trade talks, and they accomplished nothing in their trade talks. And then subsequent to their meeting, our president went around and cut a deal with the EU for vaccinations, for providing, vaccines. But they cut out the UK from this deal. So they carved it separately and didn't follow up with the UK and left them, exposed. And I think that's where Nigel was coming from. If you heard the full clip, which we don't have time, but that's where he's coming from. He's very, very disappointed that they're getting short shrift from one of our closest allies and one who suffered pretty good in Afghanistan right along with us.
Yeah, and it's sad. I mean, look, the UK, the United States, so important for world stability and for the global marketplace. And it's really the globalists, right, who have been so upset with the UK of breaking out of the EU because they didn't go along with a lot of the policies, the immigration policies, the trade policies. The UK didn't want to be part of that, and now they're being penalized because of it from the globalists, who include people like Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and the Democrat Party. Very sad to see this happening. Well, folks, we're going to be back here just in a moment. We've had a wonderful show. We still have some things to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we just talked about the UK and our special relationship with the UK. And look, whenever there's been issues from 9/11, we'll even go back, from in the early parts of the 20th century.
I would say post 1812. The War of 1812 ended the bad part of the relationship.
Right.
It got better after that.
It got much better.
And the French was there sooner, and they actually brought some good sauces and some good bakery goods during the Revolutionary War. Major contribution. But the Brits were not our friends for the first, let's say, 70 years, 60 years. It changed.
And then they became incredible friends, and they are until today. And, of course, the French. And the French, the British, and the Americans, are really the cornerstone of the Western alliance, the Western world. So, I guess the folks of the UK shouldn't be feeling alone because Biden really got the French upset. And apparently he didn't even know about the submarine deal with Australia.
Yeah, big deal.
Which is amazing.
Absolutely big deal.
Massive deal. And it's really got the China thing. I mean, it was really as a way to hedge against China, is to supply to the Australians American nuclear submarines. I mean, this was a big step up for the Asia Pacific and showing American influence in the Asia Pacific. But somehow, he did not inform the French, who had the contract.
I think he lost the phone number. That's the problem. Couldn't find it anywhere.
And so John Kerry's over in France, and he's kind of talking about what happened.
No,
here.
he's being interviewed.
He's being interviewed by the French media. And let's listen to what John Kerry had to say.
And President Biden asked me about it, and I told him and expressed.
You told Joe Biden that it was not the right.
He asked me. He said, "What's the situation?" And I explained exactly. He had not been aware of that. He literally had not been aware of what had transpired.
So, Rich, President Biden was not aware.
He didn't get the memo. If you saw Office Space,
he was not aware.
He didn't get the memo.
He's not aware that
Your
we're selling
TP
them.
reports are not coming through. He didn't get the memo.
8 nuclear submarines. He doesn't know that.
Didn't get the memo.
He doesn't
know what to do. First of all, he didn't know what a submarine was.
The Australians
the
Australians had the contract. I mean, not the Australians. The Australians had a contract issued to the French, who was already some years into this contract of building and supplying.
They were supplying diesel electric. They were supplying, traditional engines. But what they want is 2021, 21st century, killer submarines. I mean, they have to have it over there because there's going to be a very big theater of opportunity for the Chinese, which it is right now in that part of the world. So, yeah, and it's so ticked off. The French recalled their ambassador.
Yeah.
It took him a little time to pack. He had nice clothing. But he recalled the ambassador and went back to France. This is not a good thing. I thought Biden was coming in as the guy who's going to, kumbaya everybody around the world and just make it so good, sort of like the way Obama kind of did, I think. Maybe not.
Well, yeah, he was going to be the unifier, and he was, America is back, right? America's back. That was like
normalcy. The word they used was normalcy is back. Coming from a guy who leaves a press conference and walks into the closet by mistake. This is normalcy. All right, just saying. I want the folks out there to realize that. Lost his GPS. Okay, Continue.
Well, so that brings me to another clip this week from, I guess he sums it up very well. I guess, he really is going to get the last word on this. And it's Senator Kennedy from Louisiana.
Terrific guy.
A terrific guy.
Great sense of humor.
He's really got a way with words. He's got that Cajun thing going on. So let's listen to the senator.
You know what the American people are thinking right now, Mr. President? They're thinking that this country was founded by geniuses, but it's being run by a bunch of idiots.
Well,
I mean, that cut to the chase. It cut to the chase. I mean, look what we see You can't make this up. You just can't make this up. Every day I see more and more silliness, but it's not even just so silly. I mean, when I see the DOJ utilizing the Patriot Act, this is a real stretch. This isn't going to go well for them, by the way. To go after, mommies and daddies who are fighting against the school boards. They're arguing to save the books. Classic books. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, can't have it. Kill a Mockingbird, great story. Anti-racist book, a great book I had to read when I was a kid. Can't have that. So they're fighting against, and I don't mean that in the literal sense, but in the arguing sense, they can become criminals, they go to jail. This is outrageous.
Domestic terrorism.
Domestic terrorism.
Well, Rich, as usual, you get the last word. But unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.